Okay, so I got the rocker shaft assembly over here on the workbench. I've already hot tanked it and it's fairly clean. However, I want to go ahead and pull this cotter pin off. Go through here and clean everything up nice. Make sure the tube's nice and clean. Make sure all my oil passages are good and clean. And then just kind of lubricate everything. Make sure all my adjusters turn real well. And then one other thing I want to do is on the intake valves. Since the intake doesn't have the little rotator cap, it's put a little indention on them. I'm just going to take some light sandpaper and radius that back out. On these exhaust ones, they have the little rotator caps. Those are getting reused, so I'm not worried about these guys. It's just the intakes. So, first thing I'm going to do, like I say, is pull this cotter pin and then just slide everything off in one direction. This one stand here is cast iron. And this is the one that had that big long head bolt in it. These two here look similar. These are both oil passage ones. And then these two look similar. They can probably be interchanged, but I'm not going to. I'm going to try to keep everything in line so everything goes back where it should. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do is undo my cotter pin. Just undo it and slide it out. And I just dropped the rocker arm. Okay, so there's the first piece off. Here's the rocker arm that decided to take flight on me because of that spring pushing on it. Here's our next rocker. So you can see how dirty this shaft is. This is what I want to clean up and get rid of. Got a little metal spacer. This is just a rubber mallet. Okay, so there's that guy. Once it decided to cooperate. Now we have another metal spacer. Next rocker. So this is another intake rocker. Or no, yeah, intake rocker. Now our next exhaust rocker. And then a thinner metal sleeve. And we're back to another support. Oops. And we're back to another metal support here. I tell you what. Instead of me hammering this thing all the way off of here, let me go get a little torch and I'm going to heat this guy up to help expand it a little bit. Okay, so there's that guy off. We got our other little thinner spacer. Our next rocker. Another spring. Next rocker, another spacer, so back to the thick spacer again, and now we're back to our next support. And same thing, I'm just kind of heating it up just a little bit to help loosen it some. And there's that one off. And we got another thick spacer, next rocker, our spring, and our last rocker. Now as far as this guy is concerned, I'm probably just going to leave him on there. The other option would be to take it, pull this cotter pin, and knock it that way. We're just trying to drive it all the way off. Which I can tell you that if you look down in here, you'll see an oil hole like this, and it is crooked. So I'm probably going to have to take and lock this loose so I can line this all back up. Just remember, if you take all of it off, your two oil holes are opposite of your big cast iron piece, and your bolt holes need to face this way, which you can put these backwards like this instead of like this. So just kind of remember that, you know, okay, if they're both on your left side like me right now, the bolts need to face me. And one other thing now, since I'm going to take this off, whenever I go to put it back, instead of having to slide this guy all the way from the end, I can just slide him in. So probably start, you know, getting stuff towards the middle and then cap this off and make everything go that way. And that one slid off nice and easily. Okay, so now what we're going to do, and I'm not going to film it just because it's monotonous. I'm going to just come in here and just clean all this stuff up with some brake cleaner and a wire brush, probably a brass brush. Clean up all these bushings. I don't know about these adjusters because they look like they're square thread versus a regular screw thread, so I probably won't be able to tap them. Probably just have to clean them up the best I can. Of course, just wipe the springs down, wipe these bushings down, clean everything up. Then we'll come back with the grease that I used to install the pistons. Grease everything up, and then it'll be ready to go back on the engine once we get the cylinder head bolted down. Okay, I got everything all cleaned up. Set our rocker shaft back down with our two holes towards the left. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to put this center one in first. I don't know which way I want to go with it, but I want to do the center one and then I'm going to just build out. That way I don't have to try and slide, you know, this guy from here all the way up like I did when I was taking it apart. So first thing I'm going to do, let's see here. Okay, so this thing is still too small to go on, so we're going to heat it up a little bit and slide it on. Now whenever you slide these on, this hole here is our oil feed hole to everything up on our valve train and pretty much in our head, period. So this hole needs to be lined up with that hole. You don't really need any grease on these pieces here because they're not going to be moving. We're going to want to grease our rocker arms. That's about as much heat as I can stand to put into my hand. I was really hoping that would just slip on down, but it's not wanting to cooperate. Now I got that hole lined up. Well, the bad side is now I got rubber all over my rod here. So I'm just gonna take a little bit of Scotch-Brite and just kind of clean it up a little bit. Okay, so there's our starting point. Now, I kind of have this rod backwards versus my layout, because I took everything off of this side and laid it out in order. So when I go back, I kind of have to do a roundabout method. Now these little spacers, they don't really need anything on them. However, if you look at them, you know, one side looks a little more wore than the other. It's because you got aluminum versus iron. So, side that's a little more wore, put that towards your rocker. That way you know it came off in the same direction. And I'm just going to slide that on there for now. I'll take some of this engine grease and put that in here in our bearing. Bushing, bearing, whatever you want to call them. Okay, so now we got this guy greased. We're going to slide it on with our contact tip. Our little tip right here. We're going to slide that to the same side that the bolt is on. Just make sure it moves. Okay. So the next thing we're going to put on is our spring. There's no need to grease it. Then we got our next rocker. Now this rocker was our intake rocker. And you can see where I ground it down with some sandpaper. I didn't get it completely flat, which is fine. What I did was basically took some 180 grit sandpaper and folded it over and stuck it on my workbench and just kind of rocked this rocker back and forth on it, since these are convex shaped. And all I did was just kind of get rid of the mark from the old valve. Grease that one up. Same thing, just slide it on here, make sure it pivots nicely. And then we got our bigger spacer. Slide him on. And now we're ready for our next stand. And same scenario, we're going to have to heat him up just enough to get it to slide on. I think what I'm going to do, so it maybe ain't beating the crap out of it, I got a pair of pliers here. I'm going to see if I can just hold it and get this thing hot enough where it'll slip on. Alright, let's see if that works. Yeah, a little bit. Okay. It was actually good enough to get it on there. This had a little bit of a lip on the front, kind of held me up. Now the fun part with this is getting it all the way down here to where it's supposed to go. And I'm pretty sure that I have it way too far because of the way my spring here looks. That hole right there should be in the center of our rocker arm. So here's our next spacer. And my next rocker arm. So that needs to be about right there. And I'm just trying to kind of line it up with the other one. Okay. So that looks pretty good. So our next rocker is another intake rocker. If you ever get them mixed up, you know, on each cylinder, just remember that your center two are exhaust, and then you got your two intakes on either side of that, and then your last ones are exhaust valves. So there's a little more grease. Slide it on. Then we got our spring. Then our next rocker. Slide him on. And then we'll have our last support. Which, same thing, I'm going to heat it up a little bit. This support also has the oil hole in it. This hole here is the one that has the tube that comes out and just kind of dumps the excess oil into the head. So, just like our center one, we need to line that hole up. Alright, I got that one in there and lined up. So the next thing we need to do is stick our cotter pin back in it. And that just locks this side in place. Okay. And then just take and bend out one of the little legs. Alright. So, there's this side of my rocker shaft back together. And things nice and free. So now we go to this side. Same scenario, just working on the other side. Spacer, some grease on our center exhaust rocker, our spring, and then we got our intake rocker. Okay, so now we got our thicker spacer. And we got our last aluminum stand. Okay, and just like the other ones we've done, and make sure we get them down to the right distance. And we can use our spacer and our guides on our shaft to get them close. As far as getting these things in the correct direction, when you bolt them down on the head, they're going to move. Just verify that these two oil holes are clear. That's the main thing you need to watch for. Okay, there goes our last spacer. There goes our last intake rocker. Spring. And our exhaust rocker. Okay. And then our last stand is cast iron. So he might slide on without heat, and it looks like he will. And you basically just need to push it far enough to get the cotter pin back in. Once you get the pin in, just bend over the leg. And there's our rocker shaft assembly ready to go back onto the head. It's all cleaned, greased, and ready to roll.